Title: The Soldier Who Fooled the World. How Traore outsmarted a coup in 48 hours. As night fell on the capital Ouagadougou, the city seemed to fall into an eerie silence. The dusty streets lit by yellow lights were quieter than usual. The small roadside shops had closed early, and the sounds of laughter and chatter now echoed only somewhere in the deep alleys. In a country accustomed to turmoil, such silences were not a sign of peace, but a sign of an approaching storm. In a small room, inside a military barracks that no one but a few were allowed to enter, Captain Ibrahim Traoré sat silently. In front of him was a cup of hot tea, not yet cooled. His face, as usual, was calm to the point of coldness. Those eyes accustomed to political storms and dark intrigues, were fixed on a map spread out on the table next to a top-secret file that had just been placed down. On the outside, the soldiers seemed to be carrying out their duties as usual. But deep inside, every step, every glance, there was a difficult-to-hide restlessness. Rumors had begun to leak out. A coup was being secretly prepared. And this time, it was coming from those whom Traoré himself had once entrusted with the task. But unlike what his enemies expected, Ibrahim Traoré was not afraid. He did not panic, nor did he rush to order an arrest. On the contrary, he silently observed, listened, and silently set a trap. A trap so sophisticated that even the conspirators were unaware that they had stepped into the game of the very person they intended to overthrow. The story began with a seemingly normal meeting. The key figures, senior military commanders, those who had stood by Traoré during his most difficult days, were all present. The atmosphere at first seemed friendly, with greetings, stories about the security situation, about counterterrorism operations in the Sahel. But Traoré, with the instincts of a warrior who had crossed the line between life and death many times, sensed something was wrong. A few averted glances, a few too quick handshakes, a few forced smiles. He knew well, when someone plots treason, they don't need to say anything. Their silence and body language will give them away. And what made the situation even more dangerous was that the plotters were not only domestic officers. Secret information showed that behind them, they had financial support and weapons from foreign powers, those who had repeatedly intervened and sabotaged genuine African independence movements. This coup was more than a mere change of power. If it failed, it would plunge Burkina Faso back into a cycle of dependence, division, and instability. It would be a fatal blow to the fragile faith that the people had in the new generation of leaders. And most of all, it would be a defeat for the very ideal that Ibrahim Traoré had sworn to defend: a free, united, and proud Africa. That night, as the commanders left the meeting, each one had a different impression. Some felt that Traoré had become old in his handling of things. Too calm, too trusting, too slow. Little did they know that, while they were laughing and talking, every word, every glance, was being meticulously recorded not by machines, but by the sharp mind of the man they despised. Ibrahim Traoré knew that he could not confront him head-on. If he acted too soon, he would make himself look like a dictator to the world. If he delayed, he would lose everything. He needed a plainer move bold enough to expose the traitor, but still retain legitimacy and the trust of the people. And so, within hours of the meeting ending, a series of rumors began to circulate in the barracks. That Traoré was seriously ill, that he was about to resign, that a temporary leadership would take over to ensure national stability. Everything was going exactly as Traoré had predicted. The conspirators believed the moment had come. They began to move, to plan their actions, to gather more supporters. They thought they were in control, but in fact, their every move was being watched by Traoré's most loyal units, the silent but absolutely loyal soldiers. All the while, Traoré kept his cool. He continued to appear at small events, giving interviews with a calm demeanor, confusing both the conspirators and international observers. He let everyone believe he was weak, then prepared to launch the decisive blow at the moment they were most careless. At a small tea house, sitting with some old friends, Traoré said something prophetic. Those who despise silence will fall because of it. No one but him understood the profound meaning of those words at the time. But just 48 hours later, the whole world would learn that a simple soldier from Burkina Faso had defeated an attempted coup with only his intelligence, patience, and an unwavering belief in justice. The next morning, the city awoke to a stifling atmosphere. The sky was still clear, the sun was still golden as usual, but something invisible weighed heavily in the air. The state-run newspapers carried brief reports about President Traore's health, only a vague statement that he was taking care of personal matters. But in the military barracks, rumors spread like wildfire. The conspirators believed their moment had come. Under the guise of internal meetings, groups of disgruntled officers gathered in secret locations. They quickly exchanged secret orders: who would take over the national television station, who would take control of the presidential palace, who would issue a statement overthrowing the government to save the nation. The plan was drawn up just waiting for the final moment. And that moment had come, or so they thought. That night, a secret meeting took place in a villa outside the city. All the main players in the conspiracy were present. There were no uniforms, no insignia, just dark suits, anxious glances, and oaths that echoed through the night. "It's time to save the country from chaos," one of the ringleaders said, his voice trembling with excitement. "Traore is no longer fit to lead. If we don't act, everything will collapse." One by one, they nodded. Little did they know that in the next room, a tiny recording device was operating. And in the distance, in the darkness, loyal eyes were watching their every move. It was Traore who had ordered no immediate action. He wanted them to expose all their accomplices, to expose the entire network of betrayals in one fatal blow. It was not mercy. It was the wisdom of a warrior who had tasted enough treachery. And then the first blow came. As the conspirators left the villa to prepare for action, their cars were stopped one by one on the darkened streets. No sirens, no gunshots, just masked soldiers acting in absolute silence, quickly subduing each subject. By the next morning, an urgent news bulletin on national television had shocked the nation. A coup attempt has been nipped in the bud. Key figures have been arrested. President Ibrahim Traoré remains in power and is committed to defending Burkina Faso's democracy. The images that were broadcast, the conspirators were being led away, heads bowed, while the loyal soldiers stood like living statues, their eyes shining with pride. But for Traoré, the real victory was not in capturing the traitors. It was in defending the common dream of an entire nation without bloodshed. That morning, at a surprise press conference, Traoré appeared. No formal wear, no prepared speech. Just him, a simple soldier with burning eyes and a calm but resonant voice. He stepped up to the podium, looking straight into the camera. A long, silent moment, as if he were speaking not to the press, but to each Burkina Faso citizen, each heart that was waiting anxiously. And then his voice rang out. There are times when silence is the most powerful weapon. There are battles where the winner is the one who waits until the opponent reveals himself. We waited. We did not tremble. And today, we have won. The room held its breath. A feeling of pride and emotion filled the air. On street corners, in small houses, in crowded markets, the news spread like a wave. People poured into the streets, waving national flags, singing patriotic songs. No one had to tell them to do so. They knew that they had just narrowly avoided disaster, and they knew who had kept the country safe. And the traitors, they would have no chance, not only because they had failed, but because the people's faith had been strengthened more than ever. And somewhere amid the cheering crowd, an old man whispered to his grandson, "Remember the example of Ibrahim Traoré. A true soldier wins not only with his sword, but also with his intelligence and integrity." But the greatest battle was not yet over. In the shadows, the outside forces, those who did not want to see a free Africa, were still sharpening their knives, waiting for another opportunity. But this time, they would face a more alert, more resilient Ibrahim Traoré and a Burkina Faso that had learned to believe in itself. As news of the failed coup spread beyond Burkina Faso's borders, the world's reaction came like a storm. Western embassies were unusually quiet. Major news outlets reported in a reserved tone, neither congratulatory nor openly critical. Behind the silence was confusion and anxiety. The elaborate plan to re-establish control in Burkina Faso had gone up in smoke in just 48 hours. In the capital, Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré knew this all too well. He had no illusions that the losers would give up. He knew and had long accepted that his every move would be watched, that his every success would inspire deeper intrigue. But he did not back down. 3 days after that quiet victory, Traoré held a special ceremony. No fanfare, no fireworks. It was just a large square where he and his loyal soldiers stood before the people, before the world. The wind blew hard, carrying the red, green, yellow flags of Burkina Faso that fluttered. The faces in the crowd, men, women, children focused on the soldier in simple uniform who stepped onto the podium. Traore stood there, silent. He didn't need a loudspeaker to make people listen, because at that moment, his very presence carried the weight of truth. His voice rang out, warm but firm. We are not only fighting traitors within our country, we are also fighting the invisible hands that seek to control our destiny. They want to see us fall. They want to make us puppets, but we will not yield. His gaze swept across the sea of people holding their breath, and he continued, each word seared into his heart. No force, no matter how rich or powerful, can extinguish the desire for freedom of an awakened people. A moment of silence. Then, like a tsunami, cheers, applause, and cries erupted from all over the square. Traore raised his fist, a simple but powerful symbol, and from the sea of people, thousands of other fists rose in unison, creating a spectacle unprecedented in the country's history. This was no longer a mere crowd. This was an oath that no matter how many plots, no matter how many external forces threatened, the heart of Burkina Faso would never be subdued. But Traore was not just speaking to his own people. He also sent a blunt message to those sitting in distant conference rooms in cold capitals. We are not against anyone. We are only demanding the right to be masters of our own destiny. If you respect us, we will shake hands. But if you try to manipulate and impose yourself, you will see, although we are small, we will fight with everything we have. He did not shout. He did not bang on tables or chairs. He did not threaten with force. But it was precisely this calmness that made his warning as sharp as a sword more powerful than any army. In the days that followed, in villages and small towns, people held small celebrations. In each place, people told each other about how Traore had fooled the conspirators with his silence. These stories were embellished, becoming living legends of a soldier who won with intelligence rather than violence, with integrity rather than intrigue. For many young people in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré was more than just a president. He was a symbol of a dream, of a free Africa, an Africa that would not kneel, that would not be led by anyone. An 18-year-old on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, when asked about his feelings after the incident, replied with a glint in his eye. Traoré taught us that we have the right to believe in ourselves. We don't need anyone's permission to be free. Under the Burkina Faso night sky, campfires flickered everywhere. People sat around, singing, retelling the story of the failed coup, the way their ancestors told stories of battles to defend their villages. And up above, among the twinkling stars, there seemed to be a star that was brighter than the others, as if the universe was also silently congratulating a small nation that dared to stand up and take charge of its destiny. And Ibrahim Traoré, after all, he was still as quiet as the first day. Still the same simple soldier, with one difference. Now, he was no longer alone, because behind him, an entire nation had awakened. In the days after that silent victory, Burkina Faso entered a new dawn. Not a brilliant dawn with fireworks and noisy flags, but a quiet, silent light, but deep, enduring like the life that smoldered in the ground after a drought. On every street, from the city to the most remote villages, people spoke the name Traoré not only with admiration. They spoke it as an oath, an unspoken promise, that they would not let these sacrifices be in vain, that they too would have to change themselves to be as strong and resilient as their leader. But Traoré understood better than anyone. True victory does not lie in putting down a coup. True victory, and the greatest challenge, is building a country where every citizen can hold their heads high, not because of a short-lived victory, but because of a future worthy of the sacrifices of generations. In a closed-door meeting with his close advisors, Traoré spread out a map of the country before him, not to mark military bases, but to draw new roads leading to schools, hospitals, clean water systems. He pointed to the remote areas where children still walk for hours to reach makeshift classrooms. If we only care about holding on to our thrones and forget about these hungry faces, Traoré said, his voice quiet but powerful, then we will be no different from those we overthrew. He did not want to be a king in a ruined kingdom. He wanted to be the first to sow the seeds of a new Burkina Faso where power was measured not by the number of weapons, but by the number of hospitals built, the number of children who could read, the number of villages with electricity to light the night. And so his journey, and that of his country, truly began. Early one morning, as the sun was just turning the red earth roofs golden, Ibrahim Traoré appeared for a small ceremony at a newly built primary school. There was no honor guard, no national anthem. Just bright-eyed children waiting for him with bouquets of wildflowers in their hands. A small girl wearing a worn-out dress stepped forward and handed him a flower. She whispered, trembling, "Thank you for giving us a school." Traoré knelt down, taking the bouquet with both hands as if it were a treasure. In that moment, all the auras of power, the eloquent speeches, the praises became small. Only one sacred truth remained. This was why he fought. Not for the throne, not for fame, but for children like this girl, pure souls who needed a fertile land to grow. But at the same time, he knew the challenges ahead would be many times more difficult. Poverty did not disappear overnight. Hostile forces did not give up their ambitions because of a single defeat. The wounds of this country, of this entire continent, were deeper and older than anyone could imagine. And Traoré, for all his resilience, is only one man, a lone soldier without the support of a nation. So, on the first national day after the crisis, he stood before the flag fluttering in the wind, before thousands of people gathered under the blazing sun, and made a vow. I do not promise that the road will be easy. I do not promise that we will always win. But I swear, with everything I have, that I will never give up. I swear to put the interests of this people above all personal ambitions. I swear to fight until my last breath so that this Burkina Faso, our motherland, will be free, respected, and developed to its sacred potential. The crowd erupted in cheers, in silent tears. In that moment, they saw more than just a president. They saw a teacher, a father, a warrior of themselves, for themselves. As night falls, torches are lit everywhere, illuminating the red dirt roads, faces lit with hope. People tell each other about that oath like a sacred prayer. And high above, the sky of Burkina Faso is bright with stars like eternal flames, testifying to a simple but great truth. People can be deceived, it can be oppressed, it can be crushed. But when they awaken, no force in this world can stop them from stepping into the light. At the center of it all, there is still Ibrahim Traoré, the small soldier who once used his silence to defeat the plots of betrayal, and now using his heart to light up the hope of an entire country. The journey is long, the enemies are still there, the challenges are not gone. But this time, Traoré is not walking alone, because beside you, a whole Burkina Faso has awakened and will never sleep again.